Today is July 1st, 2021. My name is Charles Suter. Today I'm presenting part 4 of my series Forgiveness, or How to Become a More Forgiving Person. When you are hurting emotionally from a relationship fallout, the emotional distress will likely to continue until such time as you choose to end it. Forgiveness is the fastest way to get emotional relief from any sort of emotional distress, forgiving either yourself or others or both. To get to the point of forgiveness, you must be prepared to devote some time and conscious effort to reconditioning your beliefs and thoughts about the relationship and the events that spurred the relationship breakup. The purpose of these presentations is to help you revise your hardline views and provide rational challenges to your original beliefs and thoughts so that you can shift them to a softer, gentler perception of both the so-called hurtful event and the relationship itself. Proposition 1. Simply refuse to be either a victim or a villain. Stop putting a label on your relationship follies. Decide whether you want to mend and continue a broken relationship, and if yes, then forgive and mend. If no, then forgive and move on. In either case, forgive. If you feel you are the victim and have been purposely slighted or disrespected by another person, then sure, you're bound to feel emotional distress from this point of view. But what if the other person didn't intend to hurt your feelings and or you just misconstrued the event? What if both of you were partially responsible for hurting each other's feelings? What if both parties have regrets in which the situation hadn't turned out as it did? Well, what better way to find out than for you to initiate a dialogue to discuss dispassionately the hurtful incident? Once you've reached a conscious decision to forgive others, the emotional distress will begin to subside on its own and new opportunities then arise. For instance, you could choose to contact the other party and begin a dialogue. Perhaps you become the bigger person and you start by apologizing for anything you might have said or done in anger, and then without accusing the other party, tell them how their behaviors affected you. The goal is not to find fault or to continue the conflict, but to form a means of mending a relationship, starting with your own regrets and offering information about how your own sensitivities are on the line now so as to help avoid future recurrences. Proposition 2. Stop thinking in terms of black or white. There's plenty of gray in between. There are degrees of rightness and wrongness, so don't exaggerate. Assume your share of the blame and take remedial action where appropriate. Define your own boundaries and preferences for the relationship if you both want to continue. Both parties might be partly responsible for past hurtful events, wherein one party was maybe too insensitive and the other party was too sensitive. People don't suddenly change into a cold-hearted antagonist unless there's something unusual going on in parallel. So there are likely other explanations for hurtful events, such as a misinterpretation of intentions on one or both of your parts. Or maybe both of you were having a particularly bad day. The ability to forgive others, even if they are wrong, allows for reconciliation. After a dialogue, of course, to clear the air and to mutually declare each other's boundaries. To the extent you're willing to accept partial ownership of any hurtful episode, you make it easier for the other party to meet you halfway, allowing them to save face and avoid too much embarrassment for their part in the breakup. So don't assume the other person is completely at fault. Reality has more gray areas than black and white. Proposition 3. Never forget that negativity is self-generated. You do it to yourself. Don't be overly sensitive and take offense too easily. People often act without thinking and not intent on hurting your feelings. Be willing to overlook low-level indiscretions. Non-physical events can't hurt you or even your feelings. Only your interpretation of those events can cause emotional distress. If you change your perceptions of events, you can change your feelings about them. You can discount the magnitude or seriousness of any hurtful event by declaring, now here are some challenges that you can use in any situation. This incident was no big deal. I'm just going to ignore it. Here's where you become the bigger person. Or, I don't think they meant what they said. Maybe they just weren't thinking straight. Or how about this one? They were probably having a bad day, and sometimes hurt people hurt other people. These reframed interpretations of past hurtful events may seem like making excuses for bad behavior of others, but sometimes it helps to let small slights go and grant forgiveness when fallible people are sometimes ignorant of the hurtful things they do. There will always be a time later to have a heart-to-heart discussion and let the other person know your points of sensitivity, your boundaries, your preferences, so as to avoid incidents like these in the future. My final message: forgiveness is a remedy for emotional distress. The best way to make and keep relationships positive is to stay focused on the positive. If forgiveness is your first conditioned response to social slights, then you will suffer far less emotional distress than otherwise. When you are less sensitive and not so easily offended, you can immediately shift the conversation away from any potentially hurtful episodes into an open and honest conversation, telling the other person your preferences for keeping the relationship healthy and positive. If something the other person said or did bothers you, why not simply say so? Just let the other person know immediately, in real time, your points of sensitivity. Invite them to do the same. Healthy relationships allow for an honest exchange of thoughts and feelings so that potentially hurtful situations do not get out of hand and can be remedied on the spot without damaging the relationship. Open and honest communication can only strengthen a relationship for the betterment of everyone. That's all for now. Remember to stay positive. You'll be happier, healthier, and live longer.